What is one term the kids have been hearing for centuries? If you thought once upon a time, you're correct. These days, however, in a digital go 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 world, some say that these old fairy tales are considered outdated or even problematic. Even though these fairy tales are centuries old, they provide essential benefits to young kids, especially psychological, moral, and cultural, making them valuable. These old fairy tales help young children properly process complex emotions and fears in a safe and controlled environment. In the effort of testing some of these theories, a psychologist by the name of Bruno Bettelheim did research on this topic titled The Uses of Enchantment, and his study found that the fairy tales seemed to help children confront their fears, specifically the ideas of abandonment with Hansel and Gretel and the idea of jealousy with Snow White, using them as cautionary tales. These fairy tales allow young children to be able to face these monsters in a symbolic sense, imagining triumph over an imaginary enemy. These stories can offer a safe and controlled environment to fear and conflict, which build emotional resilience in children. And while these fairy tales engage children emotionally, they also guide them morally. These old fairy tales instill memorable and important lessons of right and wrong. Everybody has heard the story of the boy who cried wolf. Stories like these emphasize honesty in children by showing them how the boy loses his flock to the wolf when it does show up, after lying repeatedly and tricking the rest of the townspeople. Cinderella teaches children about being kind and humble by rewarding Cinderella for doing just that. The Three Little Pigs shows how working hard and having foresight are rewarding by showing that the little pigs that aren't prepared and don't work hard get eaten, and the one who does gets to stay safe in his home. Studies have shown that stories containing moral content help young children to develop pro-social behavior. Making lessons like good versus evil as basic as heroes versus villains makes it an easy lesson for children to understand and to process. But beyond morals, these fairy tales can connect children to something bigger than themselves. Many of these ancient fairy tales can link children to their cultural heritage and spark creativity and imagination. From Pacific Islanders to Europeans to Africans, anybody can get has a fairy tale, and any fairy tale can be retold. While it's hard to tell from the modernized versions, many of these fairy tales are from ancient folk traditions being passed down for generations. Many fairy tales have inspired hundreds of works of art, from literature and film, showing how they inspire imagination in even adults. These fairy tales build a sense of wonder and creativity, which are essential for proper cognitive development. Even when in a modernized state, many of these tales still maintain most of their power. For example, many of Disney's animated films are actually adaptations from the Grimm fairy tales, which were created in the late to early 1800s and are the main basis for many of the old traditions and stories which the Grimm brothers collected oral folk traditions and wrote them down in their Grimm fairy tales. Yeah, some of these fairy tales have outdated gender roles and can have violent elements, but many of these stories can be adapted or they can be used as tools to spark discussions with your children. Children can gain valuable critical thinking skills questioning these stories, not just outright banning them. When you ban something and they've never seen it, they don't know what it is. It's better to have them learn that something is wrong than to outright hide it from them. Hiding something from someone creates a absence of that thing and they don't know what it is. They won't know if it's right, they won't know if it's wrong. So it's better to talk with them about it and teach them that it is wrong. Most of these stories have already been remade in inclusive and modern styles. And if none of that bothers you, you can just stick to the old fairy tales. If you have no problem with outdated gender roles or violence with your kids, that is your choice, and you can raise them however you choose. And if none of those things is a problem for you, then you can just stick to the old fairy tales and open up a Brothers Grimm book and read the old fairy tales. And who knows, maybe your kids will enjoy it. I believe that these old fairy tales are essential to a good childhood and are far from ever being obsolete. I was raised on a lot of these old fairy tales, and I enjoy them very much. And while some of them are outdated and tackle some topics that are a little bit dark for especially for young kids, I think a lot of these stories are essential to and not should not be watered down because They are important and teach important life lessons that every kid is valuable. They help they help children all across the world grow their imagination, gain a moral compass, and be able to navigate their emotions properly. In a world where dragons exist, so do dragon slayers. These fairy tales stories, or whatever you like to call them, don't just show kids that the world is scary, they show them how brave they can be. So if there's a child in your life, read a fairy tale with them sometime. Then sit and talk with them about what it means. Thank you.